Hello everyone, my name's Kyle. I'm currently in Murwillumbah, Australia, which is on the east coast, about half an hour in from Coolangatta, a bit north of Sydney, and this is The Great Escape. Okay guys, so at the moment I'm walking around downtown. I'll show you what it's like here. Give you a bit of a tour. This is kind of just a average small Australian city from the feels of it. One of the things that's interesting is Australia has a lot of roundabouts that they put in the streets, and people seem to really kind of get the gist of it. In America, there really aren't that many people that seem to use roundabouts, or at least when I see them I kind of always have this like small freak out moment because I'm like, uh-oh, yeah, I have to keep turning and go with the flow, which is pretty difficult to do with people. Now, small towns in Australia typically tend to have smaller family-owned businesses as opposed to larger chains. There is it's like a general store called Coles with a C-O-L-E-S that I see around, but typically this is the only like major business I see because like here is a fruit exchange, because in Australia fruit grows even in the winter. So the farm I'm staying at right now, there's going to be some mangoes, passion fruit, and bananas all coming to ripen pretty soon. And this is what winter is like here in the town. But as you can see, it's still pretty nice and warm. I'm wearing shorts and flip-flops and still all really nice. Oh dear, I don't like it when my camera just jumps and erases like 3 seconds of video. Sorry for that, everyone. So one of the things I've noticed that's weird about Australia is when they display their weather online, it will typically say that it's going to rain every day. But that's because if there's pretty much any chance of rain, like 10% for 20 minutes, they mark it as raining for the whole day on the weather here, despite the fact that very typically it only rains for a couple minutes, and with how warm it gets, everything evaporates. Ooh, that's kind of like a little Staples. One of the other things about Australia is with the heritage of the country being, primarily from people who were either sent to jail or to be jail guards here. The dialect or the accent from Australia was that of the typical poorer person in the 1700s and 1800s. So that's why they sound different than people from the UK. If you know why in the United States the accent's different, please drop a comment down below. I'd love to know. Ooh, but here, let's take a look to see how much some food costs. Now keep in mind, everything in the US is about 60% the price that it is here in Australia. So for a mixed entree, it would actually only be about $11 to get 2 spring rolls, 2 curry puffs, 2 fish cakes. It's actually pretty reasonably priced. I gotta say, Australia really does not seem over the top when it comes to pricing. And everything, as I said, is pretty small and local. So they, keep everything sourced to the community. It's much more sustainable than the US, where most things that you purchase are going to come straight from Walmart or Target. And, granted, there is Target here. Oh man, there is something that smells really, really strong. It's got a nice earthy smell to it. Delicious vegan food. There's lots of people in Australia that are into meditation and yoga at a much higher percentage than they are in the US. It's a very conscious community, and that's very thriving to get to be around and to get to experience during my time here. So while in town, I don't really need to eat because the farm I'm at feeds me. But I decided to get a pie because when I took the plane from Houston to Auckland, New Zealand, I was sitting next to a guy from New Zealand, which they call themselves Kiwis. And he was talking up about how pies are delicious out here. And then on the flight from New Zealand, to Australia, I was with sitting next to an Australian, and he once again told me about the pies without me bringing that up. They're very passionate about it. It's similar to a pot pie in the US. I unfortunately ate the pumpkin one I had already. But for the pumpkin pie, which is pretty decent size, it's about the width of your hand on this nice small coffee with a shot of espresso was $8.80. So in US dollar, that's about $5.50, $6. Really reasonably priced. So downtown, they have a mall called the Sunnyside Mall, I believe, which is actually really, really busy. As a surprise to me, because typically in the States, malls are pretty dead. But the prices here are all pretty reasonable. I'm here to go grocery shopping for foods to take back for everyone, so I'm slightly dedicated. But I will show you some of the prices as we go. 2 kilograms for $15 of sausages, so that's, what, about a pound for $10. I haven't eaten meat in almost 7 years, so I don't know if that's a good price or not. So this is the historicals. I'm walking down this aisle because there's a ton of people and all the others. The one thing that strikes me about retail here is it's much less about built displays the way you see in the States, and it's more about just getting the stuff out. So a lot of the backgrounds are pretty blank colors, where in the States it's all vibrant every direction. This is about the highest amount of color overload I've dealt with so far, but it's nice to see the difference. Alright, so this is a health food store. Everything's kind of scoop it on your own, then weigh it out. I don't buy this stuff, so I really can't compare it to prices in the US, but I'm assuming that it's pretty reasonably priced, since everything in Australia seems to be great, except the cost of housing. That's a little higher as opposed to the United States. But this is a very conscious community, so I'm certain that the upcharge they're trying to make is just to sustain and not to line their pockets overwhelmingly.